Hey guys, and welcome back to episode 3 of recreating Plants vs. Zombies. Today we'll be making the Peashooter. It's probably the most famous plant from the game, and it's a good base for a lot of the other ones like the Snow Pea or the Repeater, as we can just use it as a base and then just tweak a couple of things to make it look different. As with the other episodes, to start, we're just going to go on this website, which is linked in the description. And you want to scroll down as you start all the way at the top. Just scroll down to the Peashooter and right click and then save image as. Once you've done that, you can just drag and drop the image into Blender and reset the rotation and location with Alt G and Alt R. You'll also be able to see my shortcuts here in the bottom right corner if you ever get confused. Let's just rotate it by 90 degrees around the x-axis and move it back a bit so we can look from the front view and use it as a reference when modeling. So to start, let's make this big shape, the head. So I'm just going to start with a circle, so just add a circle, and I'm going to do everything in edit mode, because when you scale things in edit mode or move and rotate them, all of these things here in the item, the scale specifically, stays at the defaults, which is going to make the later effects, like the outline, consistent across the scene. Instead of scaling in object mode, which is going to change the scale here, just scale in edit mode. So I'm just going to move it towards the middle. It doesn't need to be perfect because the subsurf is going to change it a bit, and we're going to need to do some more tweaking. So once we have the circle added, let's just add a subsurf with Control 2, or you can go here to the modifiers and add one manually. If we look from the front view now, we can extrude this. I'm also going to fill the face just so the extruding works a bit easier. So we can extrude this out and scale it down, and then extrude it again and scale it even more. We just want the rough shape now, as we'll do the tweaking a bit later. So just extrude and scale basically, and then if you want, you can also look in wireframe to see the reference a bit better. And then once we have the front done, I'm just gonna inset it and then extrude it inside. Then we have this weird artifact, and to get rid of that, we can just inset that face once again, and that's just gonna clean everything up, and we can shade smooth. And if you still see this artifact, you can inset one more time and it's gonna be clean. Now we can tweak the shape, although it might be better to leave it towards the end when you can see everything a bit better. If you get that same pinching effect at the back, you can also inset that with I, and then do that twice. There we go. And don't worry about this flat part, as we will have this leaf coming at the back, so you're not actually going to see it. But if you want to, you can of course make it a bit smaller by just selecting these edge loops and scaling them down, like that. Cool, so now that we have the head, we can go into side view again and add the eyes. So I'm just going to add an icosphere. We don't need a lot of polys, so I'm just going to leave it at the default, which is 2 subdivisions, and then move it into place again in edit mode and scaling in edit mode, just so everything works nicely in the end when we add the outline. It might not be aligned perfectly, so I'm just going to move it here. And if this is too low poly for you, can always add a subsurf. Now I'm just gonna add a mirror modifier, so mirror. And because we left the origin at the middle, we can actually just use the y-axis. But if something did change because you moved it in object mode, you can always just select this circle as the mirror object. So I'm just gonna tweak these a bit from side view, maybe add a couple more loop cuts, just so it matches the shape a bit better, and I'll be back when that's done. So this is what I ended up with. So we have this geometry, so if you want to have a closer look at that, this is how it looks. So we have one edge loop here, and then we have a couple just to define the shape, and then only one here where it's thin, and then a lot more here just to clean that curve up a bit, and then it just goes inside. I actually found that with this new shape, I didn't need these, although it really depends on your mesh. So you might have the artifacts show up again if you deform it too much, like here. You can see these star shapes. Since we have that done, you might want to name it. So I'm just going to name this head, and then these eyes. And now we can move on to the stem. So let's go into front view again. And the stem is actually going to use an interesting method, which is the skin modifier. So I'm just going to add a new mesh. It doesn't really matter what you use. I'm going to add a plane, and then in edit mode, press M when you have everything selected and do at center. And now you're going to have one vertex at the center. So if we have a look, now here we have one vertex. And if we go in the side view, we can actually extrude that along the shape of the stem. And if we use a subsurf on it, we can have a nice smooth curve. And then we can put a skin modifier on that. And first it's going to look a bit weird as it's just an extruded square along the whole path. So let's just select everything. So make sure you're in vertex or edge select mode, select everything, and then Control A to scale it down. To fix this square look, I'm just going to add another subsurf modifier on the bottom. So we have one on top to smooth out the curve itself. And then we have another one to make it actually rounded. What you'll notice is that if you shade smooth now, it's not actually going to do anything because we need to shade smooth in the modifier. I have no idea why, but that's just the way it works. And also you want to make sure that even if your vertex is inside this top mesh, the subsurf is actually going to smooth it out so that it doesn't look as if it's fully inside yet. So I'm just going to move that vertex up a bit, like so. You can now also change the scale of only some of these vertices. So I can, for example, enable proportional editing here. And then if I Control A, I can actually make it get thinner towards the bottom. Which can give a nice effect, although you definitely don't want to exaggerate it, so something like that might be nice. And then to get this circle here at the top, it might be hard to see, but like there's a torus basically, like a donut. So I'm just going to go into edit mode and add a circle. And nothing happens yet because the skin modifier, again, is kind of weird sometimes, so just with it selected, just click mark root, and then you'll have your cylinder. I'm just going to scale that down until it kind of matches the scale. And then again, Control A to make it thinner. So maybe something like that. Cool. You can always tweak these. I recommend, again, going back at the end when you have everything done. But I think this is a good start. And when following these shapes, you want to follow the green outline, not the black. Like right here, it's a bit weird, but that's just because of the perspective in the image, and you'll see that from the side view it does make sense. But here you definitely don't want it to be at the black outline, or else it's going to be way too thick when we add an outline which is going to expand it even more. So just keep it at the thin part, and then it's going to get thicker with the outline. So that's nearly it for the modeling. We just need to do the leaves. So let's get started with those. I'd say the leaf is actually the hardest part of the object, but we're not in a rush, so let's just slowly tweak that. Let's start with a plane, move that down. Doesn't matter if you do it, like for this it might actually be better to do it in object mode, as we will be revolving it to get these duplicates. So I'm just going to move it down in object mode for once. And then in edit mode, I'm going to move it over by snapping it. So with control, by just holding control, you can actually snap it to like the increments. And here we want to snap it to the middle, just so that the bottom of the leaf is going to be at the origin. So now if we just scale everything down, I'm just going to move it to scale it. That's just going to make it a bit easier. Just do something like that. We can add a subsurf. I'm just going to add 3 subdivisions. It doesn't really matter. You can, of course, go back, extrude it out, and then just scale it. We want to follow this kind of leaf shape. It can be quite difficult or tricky to get, but you can always just start with a rough shape and then go from there. I just went like in this first axis, and now I'm gonna add a couple of loop cuts and use proportional editing to move everything into place. So I'm just gonna select these, move them up a bit, and then move these down like so. You can also change your proportional editing type. Like for example, sharp might be better to get this kind of rotating effect. Then you can also select multiple vertices if that helps. Right now we're getting some pinching, but if you take your time or even use if you search with F3 for the vertex smooth, it'll come up with this smooth vertices. If you do that, it's just going to smooth everything out, and then you'll get rid of that. We could just move that into place a bit, rotate it. Yeah, I'm just going to come back to you when I tweak this a bit. So this is what I got. I actually went ahead and applied the modifiers. This is the shape I got, and you can of course tweak this. You can of course tweak this more, like adding a bit more variation, have some of them curl more. This is really personal preference, and again, I think it's easier to change it when everything is done, including the shading. So now we can just duplicate this. I'm going to do it in edit mode, duplicate it, and just rotate it around. If it rotates weirdly, you can actually just press the dot key on your keyboard and change this to 3D cursor if you have it here at your origin. So to put it there, if you don't have it there, you select your object and then Shift S and then cursor to selected, and then in edit mode now, when you rotate stuff, it's just going to rotate around that cursor. So I'm just going to add my 4 leaves and just add some variation in edit mode. So if you get this weird effect where you select one of the leaves, change it in edit mode, but all of them move, go here to your edit proportional editing settings and check this connected only, and that makes it so that only the mesh that's actually connected by edges is going to be affected. So now we can just add some variations. If you want to reselect a mesh, you can actually select one of the vertices and press Ctrl L to select the whole mesh, or just hover above it and press L. Then you can easily resize it, for example. Okay, cool. So now that we have that bottom part done as well, we can actually use that leaf as the top leaf as well. So I'm gonna duplicate the one that's already facing in the right direction in edit mode, and then with P, by pressing P on the keyboard, we can select this selection, and now we'll have another object with our leaf. I'm actually going to move this again in edit mode because, as you can see now, is if we want to rotate it, it actually rotates, and we change this. We can actually rotate it easily by just moving the cursor to that around the place where it's actually connected to the plant, so we can easily scale it in and maybe make it a bit thinner. And there we go. So now we have the general shape done. These leaves on the plant are a bit more curly, like here and at the edges here, so you can do that in proportional editing. You can also use rotation in proportional editing. So if I go here and select these end vertices and just do the normal proportional editing with our pivot point at the 3D cursor, we can actually just rotate it like so and get our nice curve. So now that we're done with that, I think we can move on to shading. So to get on the shading, I'm just going to open a new tab here on the right and set it to shading. And now if we add a new material for the eyes, which is probably the easiest, we can just set the base color to 0, 0, 0, so that's complete black, and then change the specular up to 1. If you want to see what's happening in real time, I'm gonna just go in Eevee, and if you don't see anything, you can just go and untake these two. So it's basically material preview. As you can see now, everything is still very rough, so I'm just going to decrease the roughness and go to around 0.2. And that's basically it for the eyes. So let's move on to the head. So let's add another material. Let's actually name this light green, because there's going to be a couple of materials and that we're going to reuse across the different parts, and we don't want to recreate them every single time. For this, we're just going to use the eyedropper and kind of select one of these colors. This might take a couple of attempts, so I'm just going to come back once that's done. So I got a nice color. I think that's going to work. It might be a bit too green, but that's of course going to depend on the lighting. So once we have that, I'm just going to decrease the roughness a tiny bit just to make it a bit more interesting. This might seem a bit too reflective right now, but once we have the outline and all of that done, it's going to make sense. Now we can actually select these leaves, the stem, and then the head last, and press Ctrl L, link materials, and then everything's going to turn green as well. To make this front part a dark green, like here in the image, I'm just going to go in edit mode and select these front faces like so, and add a new material and call it dark green. And now we can just make it a dark green. So I'm just going to take that. If it didn't apply, you need to click assign, and then we have that dark green. Cool. So now that we have that done, let's make a new material for this back here. It does seem a bit small, so I'm just going to scale it up. We can actually reuse this front dark green, so I'm just going to select dark green, and there we go. Now that's nearly it. I think we have all of the modeling and shading done, so now it's time for the outline. So to do that, we can just get the outline helper add-on that feline entity made. The link is in the description. You can get it for free on Gumroad, and once you have it installed, you just select all your objects like so, and then go to the outline helper and just click add set outline. And then here in the bottom corner, you can change the thickness. So that's really cool. And unlike the outlines that you might use where you basically just add a subsurf with flipped normals and then you have backface culling, this actually works in cycles. Right now there's some weird stuff going on here. I think that's just because my geometry is really bad, so I'm just going to fix that really quickly. So I just smoothed those vertices and it fixed it. You also don't need auto smooth on these. So now that's working again. One thing you'll notice is that the outline is black, and in the game it's kind of dark green. So what I'm going to do is go to the material tab here and just click on the outline, and the thing that we want to change is this here, which is the outline color. So I'm just going to make that, I think, the same dark green as I have in here. So I'm just going to copy that color and paste it in here. Might be a bit too bright, so I'm just going to darken it a tiny bit, like that. Cool, so now we have the simple Peashooter from Plants vs. Zombies done. You can go tweak this further, and I've actually done that, so let me just open that file really quickly. So this is what I made. I just tweaked the shapes a bit more, and here you can see the curve is a bit cleaner. The materials might have a different color. I also added a dark patch in the middle, just so there is a bit of a stronger shadow kind of look in there. I hope you like this tutorial, and I hope to make a couple more soon, so I'll see you in the next video. See ya.